Deltarune on the morrow, Deltarune within the next 24-hour cycle, Deltarune in 2 to 3 business days. All of these will be true one day. Depending on when you're watching this video, that sentence might be really, really impactful to you or mean absolutely nothing and just get lost in the general waterfall of everybody else saying the same thing right now. Hi again, fellas, and welcome back to Quite with a Y. On stream, on my main channel, on the second channel, even on this channel, I've talked a lot about fandoms who have had to wait a very long time to be fed by the thing they're fans of. The most recent one to come to mind is definitely Cardi. I brought that up a lot. They just got an album after 5 years. Silksong is like the one that's still ongoing, which I'm not sure is ever actually gonna come out. But the biggest one of the moment has to be people every day of this year so far saying, Deltarune Tomorrow. For most of the guys who are waiting for new content to come along, it's usually a cope. Like, they hype themselves up for something they know they won't happen, whereas Deltarune fans are actually eating pretty good or know they will be soon. The quote-unquote cope and fanaticism about Deltarune coming out tomorrow is actually a result of them knowing that they'll get it soon. As far back as last October, Toby was saying, I'm very eager to show you what we've made since 6 years ago. Chapters 3 and 4 will 100% come out in 2025. This specific time is still relying on localization. Please hear me clawing at the door trying to escape the shallow coffin I have been buried in. You know, a pretty low-key but reasonable statement, but the exact time is dependent on factors that we really have no insight to. If you saw this when it first got tweeted in last October, you would be forgiven for being skeptical, being one of the guys who's like, I'll believe it when I see it. But the fact of the matter is, when it actually became 2025, Toby was dead set that yes, it is going to come out this year. I'm not letting you forget. Happy New Year, friends. Don't forget, Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 will also release this year in 2025. And it's the consistency of confirmation which I think has had Deltarune fans really excited, as well as the genuinely long wait they've had. I believe Chapter 2 came out in like 2023, 2022. Oh, sorry, I just checked. It was 2021. That's how long y'all have been waiting. 2 chapters coming out in 1 year, I'm not sure if they'll be at the same time, does kind of help make up for lost time, considering that the release schedule originally was not nearly this long of a space in between. But I gotta say, the ferociousness with which Deltarune fans are feeling this whole thing is kind of unlike any of the other desperate fandoms I've seen. Like, there's a palpable excitement you can feel. Like, whenever I see someone type this in chat or just reply to one of my tweets completely apropos of nothing, it doesn't read as like a desperate attempt to try and believe something you know isn't true. It radiates conviction knowing that one of these days they're gonna be right. Like, say you're in a friend group of people who all post Deltarune Tomorrow every single day wherever they can think of, maybe in new places if they find that place to be funny. They are reasonably sure one of these days they are going to be correct when they say Deltarune Tomorrow. Hell, they might even be caught off guard and it's actually Deltarune today. I'm sure when either Chapter 3, 4, or both drop, that is going to be what the phrase turns into immediately. Maybe we'll even go to the negatives as we get past a few days of the release date, but it could be any day in 2025 this happens, and if you're in that friend group, you don't want to be the schmuck who chose the one day not to post, and that's the day that it happens. You're not a Silksong head who is waiting for the next major game presentation for just an inkling of news on Silksong, hoping against hope that it'll show up when there's never been an indication that it will, or a good reason to believe it'll show up anywhere. Deltarune fans have a true North Star to guide to. By that same token, I was thinking, man, I really should make a Deltarune Tomorrow video, because that's a pretty funny topic, I think. But I didn't have a lot of time today, and I'm thinking, I should probably do it tomorrow. Then I realized, what if tomorrow's the day Deltarune comes out? I cannot be caught lacking. I cannot be that one guy in the friend group, even though I'm not in any friend groups. As long as I get this out before the clock strikes midnight, which it almost is when I'm recording this, then I'm technically in the clear to say Deltarune Tomorrow. I won't have missed out on the opportunity, and then it can be evergreen until it happens. It's my own personal star chart to follow. There's something in common that all these hodlers have, whether it's the Arkham subreddit, Playboy Cardi fans, Silksong fans, even Deltarune, and it's self-awareness on how futile or how realistic the thing they're waiting on is actually to expect coming out. Deltarune specifically, though, has illustrated this very, very cleanly in that digging for diamonds macro. Deltarune probably has a few more months until release, and they're just about to hit diamonds when they decide to give up. But no, the man who stuck to his guns and types in all caps, Deltarune Tomorrow, is probably the one who's gonna take the cake by the end of the day. I think the biggest thing you can say is that with Toby Fox's consistency of saying, yes, it's happening this year, you also have some people digging into every word he says for further confirmation on when it might come out. I kind of respect that Toby stopped giving updates on Twitter. Articles that were quoting him from what he said on that website were calling it X, and I can understand the need to run. But Toby Fox continued to feed the beast, and therefore fans who are hoping for the release are continuing to be stimulated. He moved over to Blue Sky to tweet out things that he was talking about where there's significantly less eyes, but the acute ones in the bunch are screenshotting it and sharing it to everywhere else. You remember when he said that the biggest things affecting when Deltarune is going to come out this year are localization and console testing? Well, Toby said, wearing a hat crashes the game. We fixed it. And there was word they're starting testing on the PlayStation 5. Now, me, a guy who doesn't do game design at all, doesn't know what that means for the production pipeline in the slightest. Is the PS5 the last console they test? Do they test all the consoles at the same time? Does console testing come before localization? I have no clue. But it's tangentially related to the thing that Toby said was getting in the way of the game coming out. It means I have to take him at his word for that exact thing. That said, Toby Fox being a good communicative father has its drawbacks. You'd think emotional maturity is like a win-win across the board, but nope. I respect that he left Twitter just like on principle, but the fact he switched platforms going to a much smaller account than his main on Twitter, it made it less apparent that this is him speaking and a lot easier for people to pretend that they were Toby Fox and make some fake announcements. If you make a fake screenshot that is believably enough in Toby Fox's style of writing, there's a good chance you'll fool a few people out there because there's plenty of them looking for new information on the whole thing. Now, let's assume there is a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow. What exactly do Deltarune fans do when they end up being right? Day one, they have a celebration, I suppose. All the variants of Undertale and Deltarune characters pointing to Deltarune Tomorrow with a red circle and arrows pointing at it will probably turn into them freaking out and soy-facing even harder, and the text will read Deltarune Today instead. I also just wonder about its lasting power in cultural memory. Like, when the game comes out, most of the discussion around it is going to switch to what is in the game. Is the story good? Is the writing good? How have the characters progressed? What have they been doing in the meantime? Is there gonna be a time skip? Probably not. I forget what happened in the Deltarune plot. I need to replay it. Saying the game is coming out tomorrow is ubiquitous right now because we don't have the game. It's a band-aid on a void that can only be filled by getting fed with real content. Toby Fox has to chew up the code in there and spit it into our mouths before we'll be truly satisfied. And when the actual game as a product takes up the space it's meant to, how much room is there left for the fun we had in its absence? I imagine not a lot, because we'll be given something to occupy our time with and plenty of discourse to be had over what's in it. A large part of me has been kind of looking at this and trying to figure out what makes it different than other case studies like it. And you know, I've said it a few times, but the answer is that we're fairly sure that the game's actually going to come out in the time period we're saying it will. And with that supposed end date to this fiasco in sight, the rest of me is busy speculating on what happens. Like, Deltarune is a game with tons of hype riding on it already. Undertale is one of the greatest games ever made. Deltarune itself has like a lot of beloved characters in its first two chapters. So the pressure on its own was already pretty damn high. So what if Deltarune just comes out in its complete ass? I find it to be an unlikely scenario. Toby Fox has a pretty good track record. There's better odds of it being like kind of mediocre or slightly below expectations than complete abysmal dog shit, but it might not even need to be abysmal dog shit to get the abysmal dog shit treatment. If the hype isn't met and people have been foaming at the mouth for it as long as they have, dedicating as much joke creation power as they have into saying that it's coming out, how quickly are people gonna turn on Toby Fox and the game as a whole? If enough people truly seem to dislike the game, are they just gonna go back to Deltarune Tomorrow and pretend it never came out? There's an alternate universe where that same thing gets done, except there's a layer of irony to it, where the game is good and it lives up to expectations, or at least meets a bar of quality, and then people who even like the game ironically pretend it sucks and then use that meme to keep it going for some reason. I've seen trends get dragged recently in ways I haven't in the past decade, like Ninja's low taper fade meme saying that it's still massive, and the term massive now having word association with the low taper fade meme, not even as a ninja should get one, but just a calling card for Ninja's still big dog. I have never seen that happen before, man. The way he successfully psyoped his audience into actually doing that shit ironically and then getting it for real, it's impressive. And I think of all the communities going through this waiting on something forever struggle, I think the Deltarune guys might be uniquely equipped to make that happen for themselves. You've got a robust community of creatives, like fan art for this franchise is out the wazoo. Half the jokes people make about Deltarune Tomorrow are drawings, and they're creatives who have been influenced by the same kind of tongue-in-cheek wry humor that Undertale had in its writing. It's a self-replicating, self-molding ecosystem, where the influences the game had on the people who played it has the same influence on those people who grew up with Undertale and how they react to its sequel coming out. There's a larger point here in that the future is uncertain, in that you can never know how it'll unfold, but you can certainly make a lot of guesses and be wrong most of the time, and really the only thing left to do is wait and see. I'm gonna wrap this video up here. That kwytebox@gmail.com email is open if you guys want to send me topics to cover. Anyways, yeah, that's all I got. Piss off.